Christmas parade to millage rates to the latest on the mass ordinance, I talk one-on-one with Mount Pleasant Town Council member Jake Rambo for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jake Rambo, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey, thanks, Quintin. Thanks for having me, man.
You're very welcome. Obviously, you are now a Mount Pleasant Town Council member. Who's Jake Rambo these days?
Oh, gosh. Well, first and foremost, father, husband, those are definitely the most important. And then I do enjoy serving on Mount Pleasant Town Council, as well as participate in the restaurant that I own part of, Grace and Grit Restaurant. So that is fun.
I didn't know you. No, I mean, I've been craving cheese grits for the past couple of days.
Well, if you ever are craving fresh local seafood, you come on down to Grace and Grit.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come and get some cheese grits.
Shameless self-promotion.
There you go.
Yeah.
and I hope you have some cheese grits so I can come and get that as well.
Oh, you better believe it, baby.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'll run over there and burn the calories and then eat the grits later on.
Exactly. Grits don't have calories.
No. That's right. Well, let me jump into some, obviously issues going on with the town of Mount Pleasant. And let me begin with the obvious, the Christmas parade. And this is coming from WCSC. The headline, the article reads this: Mount Pleasant Town Council is moving forward, that is, with plans to host its annual Christmas light parade. During a council meeting on Monday, Mayor Will Haney raised questions about the safety of the event during the coronavirus outbreak. Let me ask you this, Councilman. What questions do you still have right now?
About the Christmas parade?
Yes, sir.
I'm excited for the Christmas parade to move forward. As we've learned more and more about coronavirus, there is a big difference between an indoor event and an outdoor event. So this is an outdoor event. The parade route's almost 1.5 miles long. There's a lot of room to spread out. Traditionally, there are areas of the parade where it could be a little bit more crowded, but there's a lot of areas on the parade route where they're virtually empty. So what we're really asking and encouraging people to do is just spread out along the parade route, and we'll really have plenty of space. Also, in accordance with the governor's orders, masks will be required. Even though it's an outdoor event, masks are required in accordance with the governor's order at the parade.
And I know Will Haney and Councilmember Howard Chapman, who I've had on Quintin's Close-Ups before, voted no, while the other members voted yes. What brought you to a yes?
I feel strongly that our children have borne the brunt of the consequences of the shutdown. They were out of school for months on end. They couldn't play sports. They couldn't see their friends. And so now that we've somewhat turned a corner and we know more about the virus and we're coming up on Christmas time, I want to give our kids and our families a normal end of 2020. I want to give them a normal Christmas. And I think the key about the Christmas parade is that no one is required to attend. So if it makes someone feel uncomfortable and they don't feel safe in that environment, then by all means, stay home. But for those who want to go and want to see the parade and want to give their kids that experience, then by all means, come on, grab your masks and come on.
And what more does the town of Mount Pleasant know about this coronavirus outbreak?
I wouldn't say that we know any more than you or anyone else, really. I mean, we don't have, it's not like the governor has the SCDHEC office that's advising him and that sort of thing. And so there is a caveat to large events like this. According to the governor's order, they require approval from the South Carolina Department of Commerce, which we just got word this morning that our application was approved by the Department of Commerce, by the people who would put in the who would ensure that we're following the proper protocol. So we're all set.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I know from the article, it says this: town officials say they can expect at least 10,000 people to be in attendance, but I've seen as many as 30,000 attend the parade. Will it be a capacity cap?
There's really no way to have a capacity cap since there's not like one single entrance and there's not tickets or anything. And I think that's actually more dangerous to have one single entrance and everybody gathered in one spot. The key is there's lots of streets that lead onto the parade route. And so we're encouraging people to spread out and find a spot. I think one thing that's important to note is that we will be live streaming the parade. So if anybody doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't want to go, their family can still, watch the parade via live stream.
You know what? Let me ask you this, Jake. Is there going to be any will the parade route be altered is what I'm trying to ask you.
The parade route will be the same that it has been the past few years.
Okay. And I know from Channel 5, Gary Santos says that they will encourage people, like you mentioned, to wear masks and social distance and may limit the number of floats to add more space in between each group. How many floats have been approved thus far?
Officially approved by us, none, because we are working on getting the application out to everybody. But traditionally, we have about 100 floats, and we expect to have that amount, probably a little bit less this year, because I could see some schools or businesses choosing not to do one this year. So we do expect probably to have less than 100.
Oh, yeah. And the article goes on to say this. During the council meeting, Mount Pleasant Police Chief Carl Ritchie gave remarks regarding the parade. He says this quote, "It's truly not a position I want to be in, standing before mayor and council, having to have this discussion, but I'm going to share with you my concerns." Ritchie says while he enjoys the parades, he talked with other law enforcement from around the state who've canceled their events due to COVID-19 concerns. How will the police department handle this parade in the middle of a health outbreak?
So I think it's important to clarify that since the meeting, Chief Ritchie has clarified those remarks to say that him and the police force support council's decision to move forward with the parade, and they will be supporting it in every way they can, which is what they normally do. Normally the police, it takes about 45, 50 police officers to put on the parade and keep everybody safe, and that's what they'll be doing.
And the article also says this too. He says the potential for exposure of COVID-19 in the parade is different from the regular service calls that they receive. He says with service calls, they're able to ask questions from the caller related to the coronavirus and can arrive in the proper protective gear if needed. What gear will the department have for this parade?
So Chief Ritchie will definitely be handling that. I'm sure they will. I know that obviously the police officers will have their masks on. Maybe they have a different type of mask. I'm not sure, but that is in the chief's realm. And so he has since said that the police department has it handled and they will be ready to roll.
And the mayor says he believes that there are safer ways to have a parade. He says one way is to have stationary floats and have spectators drive by to see them, similarly to the festival lights on James Island. He says another alternative is to have many parades in neighborhoods with fire and police crews. How much would the town would be willing to pay for all of that?
Well, I think it's important to note that's why we're having a normal parade. It has nothing to do with cost. It has everything to do with freedom and choice. If somebody wants to go to the parade, they can go to the parade and they can enjoy a normal Christmas event that is a tradition in many households in Mount Pleasant. If someone doesn't want to go, they don't have to go. And there are other events that do that sort of thing. So if they would rather experience it in that way, they can go to the Holiday Festival of Lights on James Island and drive through. And that option is already available for people to experience. But I think the majority of us on council, 7 of us out of the 9, felt that it was important to give families this option to have a normal parade.
And the mayor released the following statement. And I tried interviewing him. He won't do an interview with me. But he says this quote, "There could be at least 2 safer ways to still have a parade that is safe for all citizens and staff." And this is what he said prior to the decision. "My focus since the beginning has been to fight and defeat the virus so life can return to normal. I voted to hear the concerns expressed by our police chief in order to spare 200 staff members from possible exposure during the holidays that could result from having 10,000 people gathered on 4-foot wide sidewalks, that is. What concerns have you heard from the police chief after all of this, after the vote?"
So, first of all, as far as eradicating the virus, I mean, I've yet to hear a doctor say that coronavirus is going away anytime soon. even with a vaccine. You know, how effective will the vaccine be? How long will it take for it to be deployed or whatever? So coronavirus isn't going anywhere. So in my mind, how long are we going to cancel life? How long are we going to try to dictate how people live their lives and the decisions that they make for their families? And so I feel that it's important to give families that choice. I know many families have seen their kids suffer through a lot of this. And so giving them that option to have a fun event is something that I'm proud of.
And according to the South Carolina Department of Commerce list, the Somerville Christmas Parade was approved, and obviously your parade has been approved as well. And Somerville is estimated to have 10,000 or more people. Have you all been in contact with the folks in the town of Somerville about how they're going about their plans?
We have not, but they're very similar. I mean, they're doing their normal parade route, from what I understand. They're going to require masks, and the biggest thing is they're just encouraging people like us, where they have certain areas of the parade route that get crowded and others are empty. They're like, guys, just spread out along the parade route, and there's plenty of space for everyone. So they're taking a very similar approach. And it's unfortunate, in my opinion, that some cities have canceled their parade. I saw that the city of Greenville canceled their parade, and that's unfortunate for the kids and families in Greenville, in my opinion.
And I know I want to go back to the mayor's statement, because he said that in the statement that his focus should, since the beginning, has been to fight and defeat the virus that is, so that life can return to normal. How has the mask ordinance helped this fight? I read a lot of research, and the doctors. I had some issues with the shutdown in the beginning, and wanting to come out of the shutdowns and wanting to open up some of our facilities and let our kids start playing sports and that sort of thing again. However, I think the doctors have been pretty clear that masks are effective. At least a mask is better than nothing. And so I feel that it's been pretty effective, and I have voted for the mask ordinance consistently. And in the town of Mount Pleasant, it's important to note the mask ordinance, we require town-owned buildings, so buildings that we own, of course, that we have control over, and then grocery stores and pharmacies, and it's based on that, because those are places where people have to go. You can't avoid, if you want to try to avoid people and crowds and all of that, you certainly can, but you still got to go get your prescriptions. You still got to go get your groceries. And so we feel that that's appropriate. And I feel that that's appropriate. But it's not as far reaching ordinance like the city of Charleston, or the fact that the city of Charleston's actually writing tickets. And I don't think that's a little much. And since the extension of your mask ordinance, have the level of cases and numbers gone down in the town of Mount Pleasant?
They have gone down. Yes, they've gone down significantly. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but they've definitely gone down since it was put in place in late June. And on that point, I want to say too, I don't think it's just the government mandating masks, so to speak. And again, I voted for the mask mandate each time. However, I think the reason it's been effective is because the vast majority of people have seen the value in wearing them, and different stores and corporate offices and things are now requiring them. Most of them are requiring them. And so I think it's an overarching theme. I don't think it's just the fact that I feel like a lot of politicians say, oh, I did this as a politician and it created X result. I really don't think that here. I think it certainly helped encourage people, but it really is the fact that the citizens are taking it upon themselves to protect them and their families and their community.
And what data does the town now have to possibly extend this mask ordinance possibly to the end of the year?
So the mask ordinance is in effect through late November, I believe. So we'll revisit that, I'm sure, in November. And there'll be a discussion at that point. And there is a discussion to say, hey, at what point does local government kind of get out of this issue? All the stores are requiring masks. That's not going away. We've had a mask ordinance in place since late June. we haven't written any tickets. We don't even have anybody that can really write tickets. It's a civil penalty, and we only have one civil code enforcement officer, and he's got the entire town and the whole zoning code to do. So at what point does the government kind of take a step back because citizens are already doing the right thing? So I don't know. It'll be an interesting discussion.
Let me turn to the millage rate. The Millage News reports this. The millage rate, the town's millage rate, was established for tax year 2020 on September 25th. What was the millage rate that is for the town of Mount Pleasant in the 2019 year?
The overall millage rate was 41 mills. And so what happened was, when the reassessment happens every 5 years,
right?
State law requires us to roll back the millage rate so that we're revenue neutral. So we had to roll ours back from 41 to, it was approximately about 36 mills, maybe a decimal point in there. And so then at that point, each council, each body has an opportunity to basically roll it back up or roll up a portion of it, which is essentially a tax increase. And so it was in the town of Mount Pleasant, there was a tax increase voted on several weeks back. I did vote against it.
Right.
Mainly because I feel like there's a time and a place for things, and we're in the middle of a pandemic that has caused an economic recession in many industries, and many of our families are hurting. And so the idea of someone getting a bigger tax bill this year than they got last year was just didn't really sit right with me. So that's why I voted against it.
And let me ask you this interesting question. When will the millage actually be levied?
This year. So on the taxes that people will pay this January, February.
Okay. And the newspaper also reports, obviously this is a property reassessment year, as you mentioned, and the town experienced an overall increase of 13.2% in the property values over the last year. What's the difference about the property reassessment year with COVID?
Well, I think a lot of the property reassessment work, a lot of it was actually done pre-COVID, but that is handled by the county. So I won't pretend to know all the ins and outs of that. But it's based on home sales and that sort of thing. And the residential market at least seems to be pretty stable. The commercial market, I think, has taken a little bit of a hit, but the residential market is pretty strong still.
And Mutual News also reports the town's operating millage rate of 38.1 mils was rolled back, as you mentioned, to a revenue neutral rate of 34 mils by town council. How many times have the town council had to do that in the past 5 years?
So the reassessment happens every 5 years. So that conversation is a once every 5 years thing. Now, that doesn't say that a council can't raise taxes whenever it wants to, because it could. But oftentimes it's done with reassessment because there is a natural inflation that occurs and that, has to be made up for. But like I said, to me, this year, 2020 wasn't the right year to do that.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to ask another interesting question, two of them. What are the present 5-year and 20-year historical taxable value growth averages for the town?
Oh, gosh, I have no idea.
Okay. Oh, no worries.
As far as the values, it went up a significant percentage. The values have gone up. Yeah.
Okay. And what taxable value growth assumptions are being utilized right now in the town?
I'm going to pass on that question too.
Okay. No worries.
I don't have all those figures in front of me, but we kind of went through the basics of kind of the vote and what happened.
Oh, yes. And let me go back to the newspaper, because the newspaper reported this. Additionally, obviously, the town's debit millage of 2.9 mils was increased by 1.7 mils to 4.6 mils. The intent behind the debt millage increase was to continue the town's action to mitigate flooding and relieve pressure off of the town's operating budget for debt repayments. What actions are you taking now to mitigate flooding in the town?
So there are some drainage projects that are needed, that are very much needed, and they are prioritized. And so the first one is the Old Village, which historically has had flooding. The flooding has gotten worse over the years as more and more people have basically bought small houses in the Old Village, torn them down, and built mansions, essentially. So as more and more land in the Old Village has become impervious surfaces, it's created more flooding issues. And so one big drainage project is the old village drainage project, which I believe was the intent of part of that revenue increase from the tax increase.
And how much is that project currently costing?
So the whole Edwards Basin in the old village, again, I don't have the figures in front of me. I believe it's right around 8 million to do that entire project.
Yeah, and what's the town's current operating budget, Jake?
Oh, the town's current operating budget?
Yes, sir.
Again, don't have the figures in front of me, but we've been operating on 41 mils worth of taxes, as well as we get about a third of that's about 2/3 of our income, and about a third of our income is from the business licenses fees that we levy upon businesses.
And how much has those fees increased over the past year?
Those fees have not increased. Those fees are simply based upon a business's overall gross revenue and what industry they're in. So it's industry specific that, but it's really just based on the business's revenues. And actually, we anticipate in 2021 probably collecting a significant amount less in business licensing fees, because many of our businesses had to shut down for a couple of months, or even if they didn't have to shut down, they have still experienced losses in revenues. And so that will be, it'll be a tough budget year in 2021.
And how many debt repayments are there for the town?
How many?
Yes, sir.
Well, there's several projects that were financed prior to my time on council that's paid,
Sure.
and those debts are serviced through those debt service funds in the property tax.
And the Mutual News article goes on to say each mill increase on the residential property appraised at $450,000 is an increase of $18 on the actual annual tax bill. How many increases have been on a typical residential property?
So I can't remember the exact increase, but basically it would be about $50 on a $450,000 house. And the average increase on commercial properties, which pay a 6% ratio and are typically valued more than a home, is about double that.
And I got another interesting question. I don't know if this even makes any sense, but are businesses and second homes, non-homes, homestead, and primary homes, homestead, treated the same regarding millage?
No. So the millage rate is the same for a business or a second home, a non-owner occupied home. However, they pay taxes at a 6% rate instead of a 4% rate. And so they pay taxes at a higher rate. And then they also additionally, those properties are the only properties that pay school board operating taxes, which are significant. And so the business properties really get hit pretty hard with taxes.
Well, how many properties have been hit hard this year so far?
Well, I would say a significant number of them, because of the large increase in value of the houses, as well as the action of not rolling the millage back the entire way.
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't call it hit hard, but they were, certainly going to experience a tax increase.
And this might be another interesting question, but how would you all adopt the town's budget with these decisions?
Well, that we are going to be having a lot of discussions about that. And I mentioned the expected decrease in the business licensing fees, but it's really hard to predict. We don't know exactly what that will be. And so a lot of the coronavirus shutdowns impact won't be felt in our town budget until we start doing the budget for next fiscal year this spring and summer.
Wow. Let me ask you this too. Are there any property tax exemptions to anyone of any kind?
I don't know the answer to that. The only one I'm really aware of is that if you own your home and you live in it, you obviously pay tax at a 4% rate, and you get to skip the school board operating fees, the school system operating fees, which are significant savings.
And what are the operating fees right now for the school district?
Oh gosh, I am not sure of that. I don't
Okay.
know what their millage rate is.
Oh, no worries. And hey, you talked about the school board.
Yeah,
Let me
dang
ask you this, sir.
it.
Who are you endorsing? I know it's an off the cuff question.
Yeah, so I will. I am not going to get involved
Okay.
with the school board. I honestly still need to do some homework.
Okay.
There's a couple of forums. I believe you might have hosted one
Right.
that
Right.
I need to. I need to go back and watch one of those forums to really get a good feel for the candidates.
Oh yeah, that was 2 weeks ago with the QEP, and that was a great
Yes.
moderator. Yeah, that was great
Yeah,
forum
so
there. I
I need to
like
go
it.
back and watch and get a better feel. I've had a few people ask me, but I've had
Oh,
that same answer. I need to still do my
oh,
homework on that.
sure, sure. Oh, sure. And
Yeah.
what other issues do you want to tackle next for the town of Mount Pleasant before the end of the year?
So I would like for us to really get back to, in my opinion, the reason I was elected and the reason a number of us were elected is to slow down the growth in Mount Pleasant. We are very proud that we, at the last meeting, passed our 10-year comprehensive plan, finally. But what's so great about it and what took quite a while is that we had to get it right. There were things in the comprehensive plan, like for instance, right here in the middle of town, it would have added about 1,000 units of apartments. It would have allowed 1,000 more apartment units right here in the middle of town. And if you talk to almost any citizen in Mount Pleasant, that is the last thing we need. That's the last thing anybody wants. So we were able to, for instance, get rid of that. And so there will be someone who has an apartment complex can certainly redevelop their own property, but they can't add any more units. And so we're getting full here. And so what can we do to protect the character and culture of Mount Pleasant? And that's the work that I'm excited to continue on.
How can we, in the town of Mount Pleasant, continue to protect the culture and the character of the Phillips community?
Of the Phillips community?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, yeah, so Highway 41 was obviously a big issue for the Phillips community. I know that the county is looking at, so they had done alternative 1, which would do it through the Phillips, and then they had done alternative 7, which would wrap it basically around the Phillips community. I think they're looking at now even more options that what can you do? So if it is option 1, it's not as impactful or whatever, but that is a county project. So that will be done by the county. And so that will be a good question for them moving forward.
Sure. Sure. And now, which one of those alternatives is ideal? Which one of those ones did you personally like?
Which alternative did again, so I am not privy. I'm not on the county council. I'm on our town council. And so all of those discussions have taken place at the county. And so I will leave that decision in their hands. And I don't feel like I've necessarily know enough about it to really say, we definitely need to do this one. We definitely need to do that one. And so I trust our county council to make a good decision on that.
Councilman Jake Rambo, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. I appreciate it, brother. You have a good day.
Likewise.